Welcome to my latest laser episode of Business Wealth Impact. I'll be sharing these short episodes to encourage you, show you how anything is possible, and share actionable strategies. I hope you like it. Take a listen. Hello, and welcome to a laser episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today, I want to share about radical kindness and how to practice it. Okay, so we all know what kindness is. That's obvious. How do we get to radical kindness? Radical kindness is something beyond the trivial kind acts that people do, which are not bad. I'm not, making fun of people's kind acts. But when you want to get to radical kindness, you want to get through that layer of kindness because you feel good about it. Radical kindness gets to the core of being kind, A, even when nobody's watching, and B, when it's beyond you feeling great about it because you did a kind act. Okay, so let's dig into this. Radical kindness is hard. Radical kindness starts with listening. They figured out that listening to people is the greatest act of love, to pay attention, and listening is attention. So paying attention to somebody is the greatest act of love you can do for another human being. And the way you pay attention to people is deep listening, active listening. So listening not to wait until somebody finishes talking to get your word in, but to truly be quiet within yourself, to quiet yourself inwardly, and to open up a space in your body and mind where you're just receiving the other person's words and emotions and feelings, because listening is not just about listening to the vocal words. It's about everything that's going on behind the words, in between the words, under the words, everywhere. And when you open up this opening to listen to people, first of all, you understand people way better. And second of all, they feel that as a deep, loving act. So this is very hard to do. And I started learning how to do this when I was 25 because I was visiting a very well-known child psychologist in London many years ago. She called it creative listening. And it was really about, and I did these sessions where I would work with the children under their supervision because I'm not a therapist. And basically the person who was the facilitator, me, stand-in facilitator, what you would do is you would listen to the child and not say anything, not offer your opinions, not offer your emotions, not say, oh, isn't that wonderful? So nothing was offered as far as opinion, feeling, or mood. And the children, who were usually troubled children, would come in for these sessions. And after 5 minutes, each child would heave a big sigh of relief, like, oh, finally somebody's listening. And it was the same sigh, and it was around 5 minutes. And I understood, wow, listening to somebody is such a great act of love and kindness. So it's hard to practice all the time because we all forget. But when you start to learn it and you say, okay, this conversation is really about me listening to that person and maybe just being quiet in all ways. And then that person will feel a sense of relief that they're being listened to. And this is radical kindness. The very most kind thing you can do for somebody is to listen actively. And also, you're listening with this void, but you're also listening with the goal of trying to understand them. Human beings don't generally understand each other very well. It's why there's wars, divorces, families fighting, and all sorts of stuff. And I was thinking the other day, what is it that there is so much dissension? And I truly believe it is stemming from not listening, because a lot of misunderstandings are because the person really just hasn't understood what the other person is trying to say. So that's the very hugest thing with radical kindness, is radical listening. And just really listening to understand where they're coming from. And that takes me to the second point, which is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Again, not easy to do, especially when there's emotions involved. But the thing to do is to try to neutralize your emotions. Now, we all get upset about things. It's human. It's about minimizing how often this happens and how intense the feelings of your emotions not being neutralized is. So when you are maybe upset with somebody, the best thing to do is to say, okay, wait, how would I feel if I were in their shoes? Again, it takes some practice. And it's very easy to say. We always say, well, walk a mile in their shoes and put yourself in their shoes. But truly doing it is another thing. And I find that truly doing anything beyond the platitudes is the key. There's a lot of platitudes. There's a lot of motivational stuff out there. But do we actually practice it beyond saying, oh, that's a nice little platitude, or I like that saying, or I like that quote? So in your life, how you start this is one conversation at a time. So I'm going to have a conversation with my spouse, kid, friend, coworker, boss, whoever. And I'm going to practice this first time. I'm just going to try to open up this void in my mind and body where I'm going to receive whatever it is they're trying to tell me and try to understand it from their point of view. And you will see conversation by conversation, you will get better and better at this. And it also somehow, I feel it makes us be more truthful. Not that we're liars, but more truthful with ourselves, with our own thoughts, because you're sort of peeling back all these layers of resistance of when we speak with somebody, there's a lot of resistance already going into conversations from past experiences and habit. And when you get rid of those resistances, like, okay, I know how this normally goes, but I'm just going to shed all of that. And I'm going to pretend this is the first conversation I've ever had with this person. So that's the first thing, is radical listening, which is radical kindness. And I truly believe that is the biggest key. Now we're going to go to acts of kindness. Well, that's the first act. There are random acts of kindness. It's wonderful to randomly do kind things for people. And we feel wonderful when we do that. Like, oh, I was so good. And that's like a real dope hit. I love it. Now, what about those things about being kind that are not so easy? Not just a quick little, oh, I'm going to buy this person a coffee or buy him a gift or open the door. These are very short bursts and they're wonderful. What about those things that are kindness that are harder to do because it's more sustained? Like visiting people in hospital, visiting old people in hospital. Those are longer. That's okay. I've got to drive somewhere. I've got to go visit, whether it's somebody you know or not. Radical kindness is being kind, not just because you know somebody. Now, that's the other thing. I practice something called doing one nice thing for somebody every day. And it's in my calendar every day. And it doesn't apply to family. So it doesn't apply to doing one nice thing for your kids, because we do nice things for our kids every day. And we shouldn't really have to remind ourselves to do nice things for our kids. I certainly don't. Or do one nice thing for my spouse. Well, we kind of know to do nice stuff for our spouse or our family. So kindness that goes beyond the family unit, because a lot of people are very kind to their families, but then it doesn't go any further. Kindness should be, I believe I'll say the word should be more expansive, that we're just going to be generally kind to human beings, whether we know them or not. Strangers, family, friends, clients, people that we know, people in your congregation at church even. So when you extend that it really doesn't matter what your relationship with the person is, that you're going to be kind anyway. That is true loving your brother and your sister. That's true kindness, because there's nothing really in it for you as far as, oh, the family's going to say how wonderful and kind you are, and your friends are going to give you a pat in the back. True radical kindness is when you do things that nobody knows about. So when you do kind things and no one is going to witness it or know about it, that's the next level of radical kindness. So the thing is that the less merit you get, the more kind it is, because that means you're just being kind just for the sake. Okay, now we move to forgiveness. Now, forgiveness has many levels. We have forgiveness because somebody said they're sorry. That is actually really conditional forgiveness, actually. And I know a lot of people have this thing where I really want them to apologize. Well, okay, that's nice. And people should apologize if they do something wrong. However, we should not base whether we forgive people on whether they've said sorry or not. Now, I'll say that again. We should not base whether we forgive people on whether they say sorry or not. Sure, feels great when people say, I'm so sorry. We're human. I've gotten to a point where it doesn't matter to me whether somebody apologizes to me or not, because I'm a free person. And in my mind, I can forgive them anyway. Now, that is a next level of forgiveness. If you can start practicing that, that is radical kindness to people. That some people might be sorry and they have a hard time uttering the words, I'm sorry. Okay. That doesn't mean that they are not sorry. And whether they're sorry or not, when you can get yourself to a point where you're like, well, I'm going to forgive them no matter what. First of all, you become a much healthier human being on a mental level, because then the way you feel and the way you're leading yourself in your life is not conditional, and it does not depend on other people. And the more you live your life where your emotions and intentions and how you feel and your decisions are not based on what other people say, think, feel, or tell you, then you have true power. So there's a lot of benefits to this radical kindness of forgiveness. Now, regarding forgiveness, when you, apart from your other people, forgive yourself, that's radical kindness to yourself. Is to forgive yourself is radical kindness to oneself. Now, that's hard to do, but a way of doing that is to say to yourself, there is nothing to forgive. Now, I know that everybody's going to say, but wait a minute, they did something wrong. Yes, I get it. But I'm talking on another level here, that on a higher level, human beings, we are all to some extent really unconscious. Varying levels, of course, depending on the human being, varying levels of consciousness and unconsciousness. However, all of us are unconscious to some extent because we are not as conscious as a higher power. So therefore, relatively speaking, we are unconscious or not as conscious as some other person that may be more conscious. And I think we can all agree that usually we're going to find somebody that's more conscious than us, unless we're the most conscious person in the whole entire world. I think we can all agree on that. So there are varying levels of consciousness. So what I'm saying is, if we can just not analyze that too much and not really know where we are on that, we don't know how conscious we are. But if we say everybody's unconscious to some point, and we say, look, maybe they were aware of what they did, maybe not, doesn't matter. I'm going to forgive them anyway. I'm just going to say there's nothing to forgive, because in my heart, I've decided I'm good no matter what. And they might have done the wrong thing, but I don't want to have a grudge, and I don't want to live that way because it's damaging to me. So I'm going to forgive them. Even if they're sorry or not, conscious or not, there's nothing to forgive. Again, we know some people do things wrong. So technically, yes, there is something to forgive, but in your heart, if you get to that point of evolution, God bless you, because that's a really good point. Now, I'm working towards that. I am not there all the time, but I've noticed that I clear things much quicker because the period of me not forgiving or holding a grudge or whatever that is much smaller now. I'm reducing it. So it's not about all or nothing. It's always about getting your foot in the door as far as human development and self-development, and not all or nothing. It's improving in the process. It's like marketing. You put the reps in. You put the reps in for everything in life, whether that's learning a musical instrument, whether that's learning all of this, whether that's forgiving people and being radically kind. But forgiving people is, I think, a very high form of radical kindness. And the other thing is to forgive yourself. Now, the best way of forgiving yourself is to understand that the past cannot be changed. And when you give up the idea of a better past, you've arrived. The past can't be changed, but we're always trying to rework the past and try to make it better than it was because we're so unhappy with certain things that happened. However, we have to accept what is and what was. And by trying to relive the past and try to make it seem better in your mind, it won't. And when you give up the idea of a better past, or the idea of, or a better past, you're like, well, it was what it was. And going over and over and over and over, not forgiving myself doesn't change anything. When I realized that, everything opened up for me. That changed my life. I thought, wait, I'm going to give up the idea of a better past because it happened. It won't get any better. We can't go back and make that better, that situation or whatever it was, or era or anything better by going around and around in your brain. So that is radical kindness to oneself. Okay, I hope you really enjoyed this laser episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a beautiful, blessed, wonderful day. Take care. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Business Wealth Impact. I hope you found today's conversation insightful and life-changing. If you want to support the show and stay up to date with all of our latest episodes, the easiest way to do that is by following us on your favorite podcast platform. Just hit that follow button to never miss an episode. And if you really love the show and want to help us spread the word, leave us a review and share the podcast with your friends. Again, be sure to subscribe, and until next time, be impactful.